The diplomatic shuttle moved slowly through the purple sky of Valoris Prime. Inside the small craft sat Ambassador Helen Carter with her security team of 4 Marines. She looked out the window at the massive towers below. This was the home of the Galactic Council, the group that ruled over hundreds of alien worlds. Helen had spent 3 years trying to get humanity a seat at their table. Today was supposed to be the day they finally said yes. Captain Jake Morrison watched everything from his ship in orbit. He commanded the ESS Defender, a human vessel built for peaceful missions but armed just in case. Something felt wrong to him. The aliens had been acting strange for weeks. Their messages were cold and their tone was harsh. Helen told him not to worry, but Jake could not shake the bad feeling in his gut. The shuttle landed on a platform made of white stone. Helen stepped out wearing her best diplomatic uniform. The sun of this world was bright and warm. Around her stood 12 different species, each one representing their home worlds on the council. The leader was a tall reptile creature called the Krathani Archon. His scales were dark red and his eyes were yellow. He looked at Helen like she was an insect. Helen walked to the center of the circle. She had practiced her speech 100 times. She wanted to show the council that humans were ready to join the galactic community. She wanted them to see that Earth could be a good partner and a valuable friend. Before she could speak, the Archon raised one clawed hand. His voice was deep and filled with anger. He told Helen that the council had made a decision about humanity. He said that humans were dangerous. He said they grew too fast and fought too much. He said Earth was a threat to every peaceful species in the galaxy. Helen tried to respond. She tried to explain that humanity had changed. She wanted to tell them about all the good things humans had done. She wanted to show them that Earth deserved a chance. But the Archon did not want to hear it. The guards around the platform raised their weapons. Energy beams shot out in bright flashes of light. Helen's shields activated automatically, but they only lasted a few seconds. The weapons were too strong. The beams cut through her protection and hit her body. She fell to the ground without making a sound. Her security team died the same way. None of them had a chance to fight back. Jake watched it happen on his screen. For a moment, he could not move. He could not believe what he was seeing. The council had just murdered a human ambassador under a flag of peace. This was not just a crime. This was an act of war. His communications officer turned to him with wide eyes. Earth was already sending new orders. Every human ship in space was getting the same message. Admiral Peter Hayes appeared on the screen. His face was hard as stone. His voice was quiet, but everyone could hear the rage behind his words. The Admiral said that the Galactic Council had committed an act of war. He said that Ambassador Helen Carter was murdered while trying to make peace. He said that as of right now, Earth and all her colonies were at war with the Council. Every human military force was being activated. Every ship and every soldier was being called to fight. The Admiral's last words were simple and cold. He told them to show the galaxy what happens when you wake up humanity's anger. Jake looked at his crew. Every person on the bridge was staring at their screens in shock. Then slowly, one by one, they turned to look at him. He saw the same thing in every face. It was not fear. It was pure rage. He gave his first order of the war. Turn the ship around and head back to Earth. They needed to join the fleet. They needed to prepare for what was coming. The Council thought they had eliminated a threat by killing Helen. Instead, they had just started something that would change the galaxy forever. All across human space, the reaction was the same. On Earth, people poured into the streets. There was no panic. There was no confusion. Everyone knew what had to be done. The old arguments about nations and borders disappeared. Every human on every world united under one single goal. They would make the Council pay for what they had done. The hidden military bases came online. Humanity had been building weapons in secret for years. They knew that first contact might not go well. They knew that the galaxy might be hostile. So while they sent diplomats and scientists to meet the aliens, they also built warships in the shadows. They constructed massive factories in the asteroid belt. They hid construction yards on the dark side of the moon. They put weapons platforms around Mars. The Council thought humanity only had a few exploration ships. They thought Earth was weak and unprepared. They were about to learn how wrong they were. In underground command centers, generals pulled up war plans that had been ready for years. Factory workers reported to their stations and began building more ships and weapons. Soldiers said goodbye to their families and headed to training camps. Scientists worked on new technologies that could give humanity an edge. Everyone had a job to do. Jake's ship was one of the first to reach Earth orbit. The sight that greeted him took his breath away. There were hundreds of warships already gathering. More were arriving every hour. These were not the exploration vessels the Council had seen. These were pure combat ships designed with one purpose. They were built to fight, and they were built to win. Admiral Hayes sent out another message to every ship and every base. He told them that the war would not be easy. He said that the Council had thousands of years of experience and millions of soldiers. But he also said that humanity had something the Council did not have. They had the will to do whatever it took to survive. They had the creativity to find new ways to fight. And they had the rage of a species that had just watched their peaceful ambassador murdered in cold blood. The message ended with a promise. Earth would not stop until the Council paid for their crime. Humanity would fight with every weapon and every tactic they had. The galaxy had made a terrible mistake. They had shown humans that there could be no peace with the Council. Now they would learn what total war with humanity really meant. The war factories on Earth never stopped. Day and night, the sound of metal and machinery filled the air. Commander Lisa Bennett stood on the bridge of the ESS Vengeance and looked at her new home. The ship was enormous, bigger than anything humanity had ever built before. It was one of 50 dreadnoughts that had been constructed in complete secrecy over the past 10 years. These ships had been built in hidden shipyards far from Earth where no alien eyes could see them. Lisa had commanded smaller vessels before, but nothing like this. The Vengeance was 3 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Its hull was made of composite armor that could take massive punishment. Its engines could push the giant ship to incredible speeds. Every system was designed for one thing: to bring overwhelming destruction to any enemy of humanity. Lieutenant Kevin Price sat at the tactical station. He read off the ship's status to Lisa. All fusion reactors were running at full power. The railgun batteries were loaded and ready. Missile pods held thousands of warheads. The stealth systems were engaged and working perfectly. Everything was green across the board. Lisa nodded and looked out at the fleet gathering around Earth. Hundreds of warships filled the space around the planet. More arrived every hour from hidden bases throughout the solar system. The Council thought humans only controlled one star system. They had no idea how wrong they were. On Earth, General Raymond Cole coordinated the largest military mobilization in human history. He stood in a command center deep underground and studied the holographic displays covering the walls. Every nation on Earth had put aside their differences. The old conflicts over land and resources meant nothing now. Humanity faced an enemy that wanted to wipe them out completely. They would stand together or die together. Colonel Nicole Foster stood next to Raymond and gave him updates. She reported that 6,000 warships were ready for immediate deployment. Another 12,000 would be finished within 6 months. Ground forces were training for boarding operations. Marines were learning how to fight in zero gravity and on alien worlds. Every person who could fight was being prepared for war. Raymond studied the map of Council space on the display. It showed hundreds of star systems and thousands of stations. The Council had ruled these worlds for over 10,000 years. No one had ever successfully challenged them. They had grown comfortable in their power. They believed they were invincible. He smiled coldly. The Council was about to get a very harsh education. Humanity had spent its entire history fighting. Every war and every battle had taught them new lessons. They knew how to adapt and how to survive. Most importantly, they knew how to kill efficiently. Far from Earth, the human colonies received their orders. These settlements were a secret that humanity had kept carefully hidden. The first colony outside the solar system was called New America. It had been established 20 years ago in a system the Council did not monitor. After that came Nova Terra, then Olympus, then 40 more hidden worlds. Each one had been built quietly while humanity pretended to be limited to Earth alone. Commander Nathan Cross ran the defense fleet at Nova Terra. He read his orders with grim satisfaction. Operation Nightfall was beginning. Every colony would strike at Council targets within their reach. They would hit outposts, supply depots, and communication stations. The orders were clear and brutal. No survivors, no mercy, no second chances. Nathan had been born on Nova Terra. He had never seen Earth except in pictures. But he knew what the Council had done to Ambassador Helen Carter. He knew they had murdered her while she tried to make peace. That was all he needed to know. The Council had shown humanity what kind of universe this was. Now humans would show the Council what kind of species they had awakened. His fleet consisted of 30 warships, small fast vessels built for hit-and-run attacks. They were not as powerful as the great dreadnoughts at Earth, but they were perfect for raiding. Each ship carried stealth technology that made them invisible to Council sensors. They could strike and vanish before the enemy knew what hit them. The orders went out to every colony and every ship. Humanity would not wait for the Council to gather their forces. They would strike first and strike hard. The Council wanted war, and Earth would give them more war than they could handle. Back on Earth, the civilian population prepared for what might come. Shelters were stocked with supplies. Defense systems around cities were activated. Everyone knew the Council might try to attack Earth directly, but there was no panic in the streets. People went about their preparations calmly and efficiently. They trusted their military to protect them, and they were ready to do whatever was needed. Admiral Peter Hayes watched everything from the Orbital Command Center. Reports came in from every sector of human space. The fleets were ready. The colonies were prepared. The weapons factories were running at maximum capacity. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Vice Admiral Greg Turner stood next to Peter and asked when they would strike. Peter checked the chronometer on the wall. The Council fleet would be assembling at Valoris Prime. They would need time to gather their forces from across their territory. That would take at least a week, maybe 2. Humanity would use that time to hurt them as much as possible. He gave the order to begin Operation Nightfall. All across the frontier, human raiders would start hitting Council targets. They would destroy supply lines and eliminate isolated outposts. By the time the Council realized what was happening, it would be too late to stop it. The first strikes began within hours. Human ships appeared out of nowhere at Council border stations. These outposts had stood for centuries, watching for threats from unknown space. The Council soldiers stationed there believed they were safe. They were wrong. Captain Amy Walsh commanded the ESS Phantom, one of the stealth frigates assigned to the raiding campaign. Her target was Station Epsilon 7, a monitoring post on the edge of Council space. The station had a crew of 70 aliens, mostly Krathani soldiers. They had no idea death was coming for them. Amy brought her ship to within 1 kilometer of the station. At that range, she could not miss. She gave the order to fire. Railguns launched depleted uranium slugs at incredible velocity. The solid metal projectiles hit the station's shields and punched straight through them. The station's hull tore apart like paper. Atmosphere and bodies vented into space. Within seconds, the entire structure was destroyed. Amy reported the kill to command and moved to her next target. There was no celebration on her bridge. This was just the beginning. There were hundreds more targets on her list. The Council had many stations and outposts scattered across their territory. Humanity would destroy them all. All across the frontier, the same scene repeated over and over. Human ships struck and vanished. Council forces tried to respond, but they were too slow. By the time they sent ships to investigate, the raiders were gone. The Council's vast territory became a liability. They had too much space to defend and not enough ships to protect it all. On Valoris Prime, the Council members began to understand what was happening. Their comfortable certainty started to crack. Station Epsilon 7 had been the first to die, but it was far from the last. The Galactic Council maintained hundreds of border outposts to watch for threats from younger species. These stations were supposed to give early warning if any primitive civilization became dangerous. Now they were just targets waiting to be destroyed. Captain Amy Walsh brought the ESS Phantom to her next objective. This was a supply depot called Haven Station. It held food, fuel, and ammunition for Council ships in this sector. Destroying it would force the Council fleet to travel much farther for supplies. That meant slower response times and more chances for human raiders to strike. The depot was larger than the border station, but it had minimal defenses. The Council had never worried about protecting their supply lines. No one had dared attack them in thousands of years. Amy launched her missiles from maximum range. The weapons streaked across space and hit the depot's storage tanks. The explosions were massive as fuel and ammunition detonated together. The blast lit up the darkness like a second sun. Amy checked her sensors to make sure nothing survived. Then she activated her stealth systems and disappeared back into the void. Her orders were to hit 3 more targets before returning to base. She would complete her mission exactly as planned. All across Council space, human raiders struck and vanished. Communication relays went dark. Supply convoys disappeared without a trace. Mining stations stopped responding. Small council vessels investigating these incidents never came back. It was as if humanity had become a ghost haunting the darkness between stars. Admiral Peter Hayes monitored the operation from Earth's command center. The display showed hundreds of red marks where council facilities had been destroyed. New marks appeared every few minutes as more strikes were reported. The campaign was going better than he had hoped. Vice Admiral Greg Turner asked how long until the council realized what was happening. Peter smiled without humor. He told Greg that the council already knew, but they were not ready to admit it. Their pride would not let them accept that a supposedly primitive species was tearing apart their territory. On Valoris Prime, the council convened an emergency session. The grand chamber where they had murdered Helen Carter was now filled with fear and confusion. The Krathani Archon's confidence had completely vanished. His yellow eyes were wide with something humans would recognize as panic. He insisted it was impossible. Humanity was supposed to be limited to one star system. The council had destroyed their diplomatic mission before they could spread. How could humans have ships operating deep inside council territory? Where had these vessels come from and how had they stayed hidden for so long? The Vorlian observer spoke next. This being was made of pure energy and communicated through light patterns. Its flickering changed to show extreme agitation. It reported that 47 council installations had been lost in just 3 days. The human vessels appeared on no sensors and gave no warning. They attacked with devastating precision and disappeared before any response could arrive. Every attempt to track them had failed. Another council member demanded they send the full fleet. The massive armada gathering at Valoris Prime should depart immediately for Earth. They would sterilize the human homeworld and burn every colony they could find. Humanity would be erased from the galaxy as a warning to other primitive species. The Vorlian observer's response made several council members fall silent. It told them they did not understand the situation. The council was not hunting humanity. Humanity was hunting them. The humans were choosing when and where to fight. They had the initiative and the council was reacting too slowly. The Archon refused to accept this. He declared that numbers would decide the war. The council had thousands of worlds and millions of soldiers. Humanity could not have more than a few dozen colonies at most. Once the full fleet reached Earth, the war would be over in days. But doubt had entered the chamber. Other council members began asking difficult questions. If humans had hidden colonies, what else had they hidden? If their raiders could penetrate council space so easily, what would their main fleet be capable of? If they could build stealth ships this advanced, what other weapons did they possess? The Archon ordered them to stop talking and start acting. The fleet would leave for Earth immediately. 5,000 capital ships, 10,000 cruisers, and countless support vessels would form the largest armada in council history. No species could stand against such power. Humanity would be crushed and the council would restore order to the galaxy. The fleet departed Valoris Prime in a display of power that was meant to intimidate. Thousands of ships filled space around the planet before jumping to faster than light speed. Their destination was Earth and their mission was complete destruction. The council believed this show of force would end the war before it really began. But Admiral Peter Hayes was not intimidated. He watched the council fleet's movements through human spy drones hidden throughout their territory. He knew exactly where they were going and how long it would take them to arrive. He had been planning for this moment ever since first contact with the council. Every scenario had been calculated, and every response had been prepared. He called a meeting of all senior commanders. Lisa Bennett joined via communication link from the Vengeance. Jake Morrison was there commanding the ESS Retribution, a new battleship fresh from the shipyards. Nathan Cross connected from Nova Terra. Every important human military leader in the galaxy listened as Peter laid out his strategy. He told them the council fleet would reach Earth in 5 days. The enemy outnumbered humanity's main battle fleet by 10 to 1. In a straight fight, those odds would be devastating. But Peter had no intention of fighting fair. Humanity would use every advantage they had, every dirty trick and every brutal tactic learned from thousands of years of warfare. The council practiced what they called civilized combat. Their battles were almost ritualized with rules about acceptable weapons and proper tactics. They fought with energy weapons at long range and avoided physical projectiles because they considered them primitive. They never used nuclear weapons or antimatter in ship-to-ship combat because it was not honorable. Humanity would throw all those rules away. Human ships carried railguns that launched metal slugs at impossible speeds. They had missiles with fusion warheads and antimatter charges. They had drone fighters that could swarm enemy vessels. They had tactics designed to cause maximum damage with minimum risk. Every weapon in the human arsenal was built to kill efficiently. Peter assigned each commander their role in the coming battle. Lisa would lead the Dreadnought squadron in the initial assault. Jake would command the battleship group that would hit the Council flanks. Nathan would bring his raiders back from Council space to strike at enemy supply lines during the fight. Every piece was moving into position. He ended the meeting with a reminder. The Council had murdered Ambassador Helen Carter while she tried to make peace. They had declared that humanity deserved to be eliminated. Now Earth would show them the cost of that decision. The galaxy would learn what happened when you awakened humanity's rage. The human fleet gathered beyond Pluto's orbit. This was the edge of the solar system, far from Earth but close enough to intercept the Council armada before it reached the inner planets. Admiral Peter Hayes transferred his flag to the ESS Defiant, the newest and most powerful ship in the fleet. From here he would direct the battle that would decide humanity's future. Lisa Bennett stood on the bridge of the Vengeance and looked at the ships around her. 50 dreadnoughts formed the core of the fleet. Around them were hundreds of battleships, cruisers, and frigates. Thousands of drone fighters waited in their carriers. Every ship was ready and every crew member knew what was at stake. The Council fleet arrived at the edge of human space exactly when Admiral Peter Hayes predicted they would. 5,000 capital ships emerged from faster-than-light travel, with their shields already active and their weapons charged. 10,000 smaller vessels formed a protective screen around the larger ships. It was the most powerful military force the galaxy had seen in millennia. The Crithani Archon commanded the fleet from his flagship, a massive dreadnought called the Divine Justice. He looked at his tactical displays and smiled with satisfaction. His sensors showed the human fleet waiting for them near Pluto. The primitives had gathered everything they had for one desperate stand. It would not be enough. He counted fewer than 2,000 human vessels. Many appeared to be converted civilian ships with weapons bolted on. The Archon laughed at their foolishness. Did they really think they could stop the might of the Galactic Council with such a pathetic force? This would not be a battle but an execution. He gave the order to advance. The Council fleet moved forward in perfect formation. Their energy shields glowed with power. Their weapons arrays hummed with readiness. Every captain knew their role and every crew was confident of victory. They would destroy the human fleet, then proceed to Earth and eliminate the species that had dared to resist. Admiral Peter Hayes watched them come. The Council moved exactly as he expected. They were following standard doctrine, approaching in tight formation to concentrate their firepower. It was the textbook response to an outnumbered enemy. It was also exactly what Peter wanted them to do. He gave the order to his weapons officers. Fire everything at once. Hit them before they know what is happening. The first weapons to strike were not energy beams but solid metal. Hundreds of railguns fired simultaneously from the human fleet. These weapons launched tungsten rods the size of telephone poles at a fraction of light speed. The projectiles crossed the distance between the fleets in seconds. The Council shields were designed to deflect energy weapons. They were incredibly effective against lasers and plasma beams, but they were never meant to stop physical impacts at these velocities. The tungsten rods punched through the shields like they were not even there. They cored through ship hulls and detonated fusion reactors. Dozens of Council capital ships exploded in the opening seconds of the battle. Before the Council could respond, the second wave hit. Thousands of missiles launched from human vessels. Each missile was guided by its own computer brain and carried either a fusion warhead or an antimatter charge. The Council's defensive systems were designed for the elegant energy-based warfare they had practiced for centuries. They were completely overwhelmed by the brutal efficiency of human missile swarms. Explosions bloomed across the Council formation. Ships that had survived the railgun barrage died in nuclear fire. The perfect military formation began to break apart as vessels tried to evade the incoming weapons. Captains who had been confident minutes ago now screamed orders at their panicked crews. The Crithani Archon stared at his displays in disbelief. He had lost over 300 ships in less than 5 minutes. How was this possible? The humans were supposed to be primitive. They were not supposed to have weapons like this. His tactical officer reported that the human fleet was advancing. They were moving at high speed directly toward the Council formation. The officer asked what orders he should give. The Archon struggled to think clearly through his shock. Finally, he gave the only order that made sense. All ships fire at will and engage the enemy. Commander Lisa Bennett led the charge from the bridge of the Vengeance. Her dreadnought pushed its engines to maximum as it raced toward the Council fleet. Around her, the other human capital ships matched her speed. The distance between the two forces closed rapidly. Lieutenant Kevin Price reported that enemy ships were returning fire. Energy beams lanced across space toward the human vessels. Shields flared as they absorbed the impacts. Some ships took damage, but the formation held together. Lisa gave the order to continue the advance. They needed to get close where human weapons would be most effective. The Vengeance entered weapons range and Lisa ordered her gunners to open fire. The ship's main railguns fired continuously. Each shot sent a metal slug downrange at tremendous velocity. The projectiles tore through Council ships like paper. Her missile pods launched their payloads in steady streams. Her point defense systems tracked and destroyed incoming enemy fighters. All around her, the battle descended into chaos. This was not the orderly combat the Council was used to. This was close-quarters brutality where only the strongest and fastest survived. Human ships rammed enemy vessels when their weapons ran dry. Crews boarded disabled Council ships and fought hand-to-hand in their corridors. It was warfare at its most savage, and humanity had spent thousands of years perfecting it. Captain Jake Morrison commanded the ESS Retribution as it cut through the Council formation. His battleship was smaller than the great dreadnoughts, but faster and more maneuverable. He used that speed to target Council command ships, the vessels coordinating enemy formations. Every command ship he destroyed made the Council fleet less organized and easier to kill. His tactical officer reported that they had a clear shot at the Council flagship. The Divine Justice was trying to retreat to the rear of the formation. Jake smiled coldly and gave the order to pursue. His ship took heavy damage as Council vessels tried to protect their leader. Hull breaches appeared across the Retribution. Crew members died at their stations, but Jake refused to break off. The Retribution closed to point-blank range with the Divine Justice. Jake ordered every weapon to target the flagship's bridge section. Railguns, missiles, and even laser cutters fired together. The combined assault overwhelmed the flagship's shields. Metal tore and atmosphere vented. The bridge section exploded in a brilliant flash. Jake's ship had taken too much damage to escape. Systems were failing all across the vessel. He looked at his crew and saw that they understood. He opened a channel to all human forces and spoke his final words. "This is for Helen," he said simply. Then he rammed what was left of the Retribution directly into the Divine Justice's reactor core. The explosion consumed both ships and several Council vessels nearby. The flagship of the Galactic Council's Grand Fleet was destroyed along with its commander. The loss of the Archon broke the Council's will to fight. Their formation collapsed completely. Ships began trying to escape individually, rather than fighting as a coordinated force. The human fleet pursued ruthlessly, destroying every vessel they could catch. What had been a proud armada was now a fleeing mob. Admiral Peter Hayes watched from the Defiant as the battle turned into a rout. The Council had come to Earth expecting an easy victory. Instead, they had encountered an enemy unlike anything they had faced before. Human weapons, human tactics, and human ferocity had shattered their fleet in just 6 hours of combat. The final count showed the scale of the disaster. Of 15,000 Council ships that entered the battle, fewer than 3,000 escaped. The rest were destroyed or captured. Human losses were significant, with nearly 400 ships lost and many more damaged. But the solar system was secure, and the Council fleet was broken. Peter gave orders to pursue the fleeing Council ships. He wanted prisoners, and he wanted intelligence about Council defenses. Some vessels managed to jump to faster than light speed and escape. Others were disabled and boarded by human Marines. The prisoners would provide valuable information about enemy technology and military capabilities. As the battle ended, Peter composed a message to be sent across the entire galaxy. Every Council world would receive it. Every species would hear what happened when they threatened humanity. The message was simple and direct. Earth had won the first battle, but the war would continue until the Council surrendered completely. The news of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Every Council world received the reports at the same time. Their Grand Fleet, the most powerful military force ever assembled, had been destroyed by a species they considered primitive. 15,000 ships had departed for Earth in triumph. Fewer than 3,000 returned in defeat and disgrace. On Valoris Prime, the surviving Council members gathered in their grand chamber. The room where they had murdered Ambassador Helen Carter now felt cold and empty. Half the seats around the circular table were vacant. Those council members had been commanding ships in the failed attack. Now they were dead, floating in the void near Earth along with millions of their soldiers. The Vorlian Observer flickered weakly as it addressed the remaining members. Its energy patterns showed exhaustion and fear. It told them that everything had changed. The Council's authority rested on the belief that no one could challenge their military power. That belief was now shattered. Worlds that had been held in line by fear would start to rebel. Species that resented Council rule would see opportunity in this defeat. One of the surviving members asked what they should do. Should they gather another fleet and try again? Should they pull back and defend their core worlds? Should they try to negotiate with the humans? No one seemed to have a good answer. The certainty that had ruled their civilization for thousands of years was gone. Then the human transmission began playing on every communication system across Council space. Admiral Peter Hayes appeared on screens throughout Valoris Prime. He spoke from the bridge of the ESS Defiant, with the wreckage of the Council fleet visible through the windows behind him. His words were calm but firm. He told the galaxy that the Galactic Council had murdered a human ambassador, who came in peace. The Council had declared humanity a threat that needed to be eliminated. Then they sent their fleet to destroy Earth. Now that fleet was destroyed and Earth still stood, Peter made it clear that humanity did not want to conquer the galaxy. They were not interested in building an empire or enslaving other species. But they would not tolerate threats to their existence. The Council had to be held accountable for their crimes and the galaxy had to change. He laid out Earth's terms. First, the Galactic Council would be dissolved. The old system that gave absolute power to a few species would end. In its place would be a new organization where every species had a voice. Humanity would be a founding member of this new alliance and would help write its rules. Second, every species that participated in the attack on Earth would pay reparations. The families of those killed in the battle would be compensated. Resources would be provided to rebuild the damaged human ships. Most importantly, the family of Ambassador Helen Carter would receive recognition and payment for their loss. Third, a memorial would be built on Valoris Prime itself. It would bear Helen's name and image. It would stand as a permanent reminder of what happens when diplomacy is betrayed. Every being in the galaxy would be able to visit it and remember the cost of choosing violence over peace. Fourth and finally, there would be peace. Humanity had demonstrated what they were capable of when forced to fight. They had shown that human weapons and tactics could defeat any enemy. But they preferred to build rather than destroy. If the Council and its members accepted these terms, Earth would stop the war. If they refused, human fleets would continue their advance until the Council had nothing left. Peter ended his transmission with a warning. The galaxy now knew that humanity existed and could not be easily destroyed. Any species that threatened Earth in the future would face the same fate as the Council fleet. Peace was humanity's preference, but survival was their absolute priority. The transmission ended and silence filled the Council chamber. Every member knew they had no choice. Their fleet was destroyed, their authority was broken, and their worlds were vulnerable. If they refused the human terms, Earth would keep attacking until the Council civilization collapsed completely. The vote was unanimous. The Galactic Council accepted Earth's terms without modification. The ancient alliance that had ruled for 10,000 years officially dissolved itself. In its place would be the new Galactic Assembly, with representatives from every known species. Within months, the transition began. Council worlds that had been suppressed for centuries found their voices. Species that had been treated as inferior demanded equal representation. Humanity sent diplomats and advisors to help establish the new government. They also kept their military forces on high alert to ensure no one tried to restart the war. Commander Lisa Bennett received a promotion to admiral after the battle. Her handling of the Vengeance during the fight had been exemplary. Now she was given a new assignment overseeing the construction of the Helen Carter Memorial on Valoris Prime. It was a task she accepted with pride and sorrow. The memorial took 6 months to complete. Human and alien workers collaborated on the project. The design was simple and elegant. A statue of Helen stood 20 meters tall on a base of white marble. She was shown with one hand extended in greeting and her face turned toward the sky. Around the base were the names of everyone who died in the war, human and alien alike. The dedication ceremony drew representatives from every species in the galaxy. Thousands of beings gathered in the plaza around the memorial. News broadcasts carried the event to billions of viewers across hundreds of worlds. It was the first major event of the new galactic community. Admiral Lisa Bennett gave the main speech. She stood at a podium in front of the statue and looked out at the crowd. She spoke about Helen Carter and what she represented. Helen had come to Valoris Prime seeking peace and understanding. She believed that different species could work together despite their differences. She had faith that the galaxy could be better than it was. Lisa's voice grew harder as she described what happened next. The Council murdered Helen for daring to ask for friendship. They killed her because they feared what humanity might become. That single act of violence started a war that killed millions and destroyed the Council's power forever. But Lisa said that Helen's death had accomplished something important. It forced the galaxy to change in ways that never would have happened peacefully. The old Council would have continued ruling through fear and force for thousands more years. Now there was a chance to build something better, something more fair, something that honored the diversity of life in the galaxy. She concluded by saying that Helen Carter came to the stars seeking peace. She was murdered for that dream. But humanity fought a war to make that dream possible. The galaxy would remember Helen not as a victim, but as the woman whose death changed everything. Her sacrifice bought the opportunity for real cooperation between species. Admiral Peter Hayes watched the ceremony from Earth. He had chosen not to attend in person because he wanted the focus to be on Helen rather than the military victory. But he felt satisfaction as he listened to Lisa's speech. The war had been brutal and costly, but it achieved the goal. Humanity was safe and the galaxy was changing for the better. Reports came in daily from human colonies across space. The secret settlements were no longer hidden. They were now open trading partners with dozens of alien worlds. Human technology and ideas flowed outward while alien knowledge and culture came to Earth. The exchange of information was creating innovations neither side could have achieved alone. The new Galactic Assembly held its first official meeting 1 year after the battle. Representatives from 200 species gathered in a new building, constructed specifically for the purpose. Unlike the old council chambers, this space was designed with equality in mind. Every delegate had the same size seat and the same speaking rights regardless of their species' power. Ambassador Claire Mitchell represented humanity at the assembly. She had been chosen specifically because she shared Helen Carter's diplomatic skills and peaceful philosophy. Her first speech to the assembly echoed the words Helen would have spoken if she had been allowed to live. Claire talked about cooperation and mutual respect. She spoke about the potential for different species to learn from each other. She emphasized that the galaxy was large enough for everyone, and that competition did not have to mean conflict. Her words were well received by most delegates, though some still harbored resentment toward humanity for destroying the Council. Back on Earth, life gradually returned to normal. The war factories slowed their production, though they did not stop completely. Humanity had learned the hard lesson that peace had to be backed by strength. The fleet remained large and well-trained. New technologies developed during the war were adapted for peaceful purposes. Earth's economy boomed as trade with alien worlds increased. Captain Amy Walsh returned from her raiding missions with commendations and a promotion. She took command of a training squadron, teaching new pilots the tactics that had worked so well against the Council. Her message to every class was the same. Stay sharp and stay ready because the galaxy is dangerous. Humanity won this war, but there would always be new threats. Commander Nathan Cross and the Nova Terra colony fleet integrated with the main Earth forces. The hidden colonies were now official parts of human civilization. They continued to grow and develop, serving as stepping stones for humanity's expansion into